Alexander's wife died when their son was 5 years old. He put all his effort into providing his son a good life and did a pretty good job. He was now a partner in a legal company. They had a large home, and Max got an excellent education. You'd think everything was excellent, but there was one thing off. After Max graduated from college, he kept living with his father, didn't work, and didn't plan to do anything, it seemed. He spent his nights in clubs, came home late, and then slept all day. Alexander was worried about his son's attitude, but all their conversations ended in arguments and misunderstandings. When he woke up, Alexander made himself get up and go to the kitchen. He didn't want to since his son wasn't home all night. After his coffee, Alexander went to Max's room. He knocked on the door and went in without waiting for an answer. He found his son sleeping with a new girl in his bed. "How long can this last?" Alexander thought gloomily. Alexander told the girl who woke up to gather her things and leave his house. Max slept soundly in the meantime. After having a hard time waking him up, Alexander began telling him this wasn't the right way to live again. He was already 25 and should start thinking about his future. The time was long overdue for him to get a job and become independent and, in the end, stop all these one-night stands and think about a family. Max said he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was wrong and wanted to have fun, and that he wasn't interested in having a family. He said his father was greedy for wanting him to be financially independent and didn't say anything about work. While sitting in his office, Alexander looked out the window, thinking about what he missed, what mistake he made in raising his son, and what he should do next. There was a knock at the door, and Margaret came in. After looking at Alexander, she exhaled and asked, "What is it this time?" "The same. Nothing interests him other than girls and parties and burning money left and right. I don't know what to do with him." "I think you're taking too much care of him. His education will let him find a good job and provide for himself, but you keep financing his nights without any limits. I think you need to be stricter." Margaret was Alexander's business partner as well as his friend. They had known each other for over 30 years, and she was the only person who he could tell everything to. "I don't understand how this happened to him. I've known him since birth. You're a good father, and you raised him wonderfully. He grew into an amazing young man. Where does this immaturity come from?" "People are very different," Margaret continued as if she were talking to herself. "My neighbor adopted a homeless girl. She lost her parents early and her home recently. So this sweet, amazing girl without any support in her life studies, works, helps around the home, and is always grateful for the adoption. And here, you put in all that effort with ingratitude in return. I don't understand." When he came home, Alexander told Max to sit on the couch. "Dad, I was thinking, and I decided I want to live alone. It will be better for the both of us. You won't see when I come home what I do or send girls out of my bed. There will be less reasons for arguments and fights. So I need an apartment," Max told his father audaciously. Alexander was taken aback by his son's disrespect. Everything boiled over inside. "You're serious?" he asked, looking in his son's eyes, barely containing his anger. "Well, yeah, it's just an apartment. What, can you not afford it?" Max answered, not thinking. "Do you even know how hard I work for my money? Do you even have the slightest idea of what earning money means? If you want an apartment, get a job. Also, you will pay for your partying yourself now. I'm done." Alexander exploded red from anger. "Are you crazy? How will I pay for it if I don't have a job?" Max's audacity was astounding, but Alexander didn't listen. It hurt too much to keep talking, so he went to his room silently. At the club while drinking a cocktail, Max complained about his father to his friend Justin. Justin was from a well-off family but went to work for his father's company after finishing college, and then later opened a subsidiary where he became the boss. He was a fairly successful businessman and provided for himself fully. "Listen, loan me the money for an apartment. I just want to get away from him ASAP," Max told his friend. After a pause, Justin smiled, looked at Max and said, "Sorry, bro, but you're currently completely provided for by your father. Now that you've fought and been cut off, how are you going to pay me back?" After another pause, he added, "Sorry, but your father's right about everything. You act insolent and arrogant and show a superiority you think you have that doesn't exist constantly. You've done nothing in your life." Max was furious and didn't expect to hear this from his friend, but didn't know how to respond, so he got up and left without a word. He had a hard time falling asleep because Justin's words wouldn't leave him alone. It was a hot day at the office, meetings, phone calls, and consultations. Finally, everything was done. Alexander knocked on Margaret's door and asked her to get a coffee. During lunch, Alexander told her about his fight with Max the day before. "Well, he's gone off the deep end. I think you did everything right, though. Good job," Margot said.
I was thinking and decided that Max needs to get married. He should feel responsibility for more than just himself. Now I just need to find a good one, but how will I in this area?"
"Marry? Search? Alex, what are you talking about?" Margaret said, surprised.
"I'm sure if he had a good, modest, hardworking, mature wife with him, he'd change and relook his outlook on life. I believe in him,"
Alex continued, really believing what he was saying. Margaret sat in disbelief, not believing what she heard.
Remember you were telling me about that homeless girl your neighbor adopted?"
"Forget it. Melissa would never agree to it."
"Introduce me to her, please. I just want to talk to her. Based on what you said about her, she's just the person I need,"
Alex said, not backing down. "Fine. Come over for dinner today, and I'll introduce you. But I'm not sure it's a good idea or that something good will come of it." Alex went to Margaret's later that evening, anxiously waiting to meet Melissa. She was even better than he imagined. She was pretty, educated, well-raised, and modest. Despite her hardships, her spirits never fell. She had many plans and did everything to see them come to pass. Alexander didn't know where to start, but decided to explain what he wanted from her. "You're insane," she said and got up to leave.
"Melissa, please, don't leave. Think about this. I really need your help, and I'll pay you enough money so you can buy your own home and become independent,"
Alex continued. After that, she stopped. "You're serious? So I could buy—"
"Completely serious," Alex interrupted her. "But please, don't say no," he begged her.
She lowered her eyes. She didn't want any part of this, but there was one thought in her head. "I'll have a house." "Okay," she answered shyly. The next evening, Alexander brought Melissa to his house to meet Max. He warned her about his son's insolent behavior recently, and that he can be very sharp, rude, and didn't think things through. Approaching Max laying out on the couch, Alexander introduced Melissa. Max looked her up and down and said to his father, "Dad, she's my age." "What, you couldn't find an older girlfriend? You're not 30 anymore."
"Shut up, sit, and listen to what I tell you,"
Alexander responded strictly. He had never spoken to him like that before, and Max was shocked.
"I'll buy you an apartment like you wanted, and even give you a little extra money, but there's one condition. You will marry Melissa."
"Are you crazy? What are you thinking? Why should I marry her? If I want to get married, I'll find someone better than this," Max said furiously. He thought his father might be having a midlife crisis.
"Either you marry Melissa, or you don't get an apartment or another cent out of me,"
Alexander said firmly. Max looked at his father, then Melissa. "I'm tired of this, and I don't want to see you anymore." Max got up and ran out of the house. Some time passed. Max kept living like he had been hoping his father would come back, and everything would go back to the way it was. He ran out of money, and his friends didn't want to keep giving him loans anymore. Alexander was firm, so all Max could do was agree to his conditions. Max and Melissa signed the marriage papers and moved into their new apartment. They were to live together as husband and wife for at least 6 months according to Alex's conditions. Days passed, then weeks passed. Melissa studied and worked, and Max, as usual, did nothing. Sometimes they had to talk to each other. Their conversations often ended in tears and fights, and sometimes they just sat on the couch in the living room for a long time. They got to know each other and understand each other better every day. Max didn't want to go to the parties as much, and meeting new girls wasn't interesting. The money his father had given him ran out. While discussing their finances, Melissa said Max had to find a job and that she would find another side job. Max looked at job openings but didn't try to get any interviews. Their sole income was Melissa's. One day, she got sick. She had a really high fever and couldn't even get out of bed. Oddly enough, Max started to get worried. He kept looking into the bedroom, seeing how she felt, and even brought her tea. He saw how bad she looked and said, Lisa, stop this. Get better soon. I can't even make breakfast without you. Melissa thought that was sweet and promised everything would be normal soon. However, she only got worse. Max called his father. 2 hours later, there was a knock at the door from Alexander and a doctor. He looked her over, gave her a shot, and prescribed a treatment. While sitting at Melissa's bed, Alexander suddenly said,
That's enough. Time to stop this charade. Oh, what did I do to this poor girl? What was I thinking? As soon as she's better, she can be free.
Max didn't understand why the news didn't make him happy. After his father left, he didn't leave Melissa's side and took care of her all night. For the first time, he noticed how beautiful she was and how good he felt with her. The fever decreased and Melissa woke up in a better condition. Max brought her breakfast, which surprised her. Then he told her what Alexander had said. She also wasn't happy with the news. A few days later, she was getting better and started to pack her things. Max didn't know what to say. Melissa leaving didn't make him happy, but he didn't want to admit he didn't want her to leave. And she was scared to admit that she wanted him to stop her. Melissa left, and Max was left alone. A few months passed. Max got a job. He rarely met his friends, not because he had no money, but because the parties weren't fun anymore. In the evenings on the couch, he thought about her. He missed her. The apartment wasn't so nice, and living alone wasn't satisfying. One day, he called his father and asked if he knew where to find Melissa. Alexander said he knew and had bought her her own home for marrying Max and helped her out greatly. Max stood before Melissa's doors. He shifted from left to right, thinking about what to say to her. Everything was jumbled in his head. He finally decided what to say and knocked. He heard steps approaching, and the door opened. It was Melissa. She was surprised, even upset, and finally, shyly asked, "Are you here to get a divorce?" Max was nervous and his tongue was twisted. He somehow managed to squeeze out, I'm not happy without you. All I do is think about you. I really like you, and I think it's more. I want to try again." She turned red, and her arms and legs got weak. She sat so she didn't fall. "I also think about you, but try not to every time. I thought it would go away, but it won't. I'm scared because I'm not sure that you can change. If you can't, then I can't be with you like this, even though I feel..." Her voice faded away and she was crying. He quietly sat next to her, took her hands, looked her in the eyes, and whispered, "I've already changed. My life will never be like it was. Please, give me a chance, and I promise you won't regret it." He gently kissed her on the lips, mixing their tears together, hugging both tightly and softly. She relaxed on his chest, put her arms around his neck, and didn't know what would happen next, but was happy and ready to go on. It wasn't just something she got used to. It was more. It was love. Mutual love.